Gray rectangles. Are you talking about around around my window, which is basically a browser window? It's basically Internet Explorer. Is that what you're talking about? Why did we post it? I'm not along the edge of the window, underneath the word right. Let's see. Right. No, I'm not seeing that. Does it? Okay, there is a border around the whole document. Are you talking about this border here? Underneath the word right. No, I'm not. I'm not seeing that. So, is anyone else seeing that? Robert, you're seeing it. Okay. Um, so it's a lag only when I move the screen, right? Okay. Not sure what's causing that. Is that any better? Huge one on the left now. Is it gone now? Oh, okay. I think I know what the issue is now. Okay, so I just got to resize this a little bit. Okay. Let's see. Is that any better? All right. Some people are saying yes. Great. Yes. Yes. All right. Looks like it's anyone. Well, let me ask it another way so I can get the note. Anyone still having issues seeing what's on my screen? All right. Looks like we got this solved. Good. Okay. So the objective of CS902 is to teach you how to write computer programs. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically put up different things that I'm going to talk about right in this window here, okay? Pull something else in here. Question, what is a computer program? The answer is a computer program is a set of instructions arranged in sequential order which tell the computer what to do. Okay? And so that's what we're going to be doing in this class is writing computer programs. So always remember that it's a set of instructions, usually more than one, and it's arranged in a sequential order, meaning that they're executed or run by the computer in order. So you write the first line, and then you write the second line, and then the third line, and they are executed in that order. And so order of execution is important, knowing that it's sequential starting from the top of the page, going down to the bottom. Okay? Any questions on that? All right, I don't see anybody's hand raised, so I'm assuming that that's fine. Okay, next question and answer. Question, why do we have to write computer programs? And this is true because computers are dumb machines. And as programmers, you're always going to basically remember that because it will do exactly what you tell them to do. So if you give them the wrong instruction, they're going to follow it kind of just blindly. Okay, so you have to be aware of that, and that's a lot that has a lot to do with just experience and knowing how to write programs. As you write more programs, you will understand what can go wrong, and also the computer will tell you usually if you've written something that it doesn't understand. And so again, when we get to syntax, we'll talk about that a little bit more. So again, if you have any questions while I'm talking about this, please do raise your hand, and then I'll stop and I'll look for the question in the chat room. Okay. Let's go on to the next item. Oh, right. So, where are computer programs used? And we kind of know the answer to this. In today's age, almost everywhere, you can use computer programs to do any task that is repetitive. So usually, most programs are written to do repetitive tasks. Okay? And so just be aware that there are mechanisms in computer programs that allow you to execute these repetitive tasks. For example, bank ATM is a simple computer. If you want a computer to work as an ATM in a bank, all you have to do is write a bunch of instructions to the computer. These instructions tell the computer how to behave, how to interact with the customer. Remember, a computer does not do anything on its own. It just follows the instructions given by the programmer. And that's what you'll be learning, how to become a programmer. Okay? So again, remember that the computer only does what the instructions tell it to do. Okay, so that's the instructions are the key aspect, and those are what we'll be writing in our programs. Okay, is writing those instructions to basically accomplish some sort of tasks. All right, so go on to the next question. Okay, let's see. So, question. Once I write a computer program, a set of instructions, do I need to sit and monitor the computer as it runs or executes my program? The answer is no. Once you write a program, a set of instructions, you store them in the computer's memory. The memory, now, again, a lot of you have probably come from CS 901, and there's a difference between memory and hard disk. And memory is what's active while your computer is running. So while it's on, that's when you have access to the memory. When you store things or save files, they're saved to the hard disk, okay, which is more permanent, or what's called non-volatile memory, meaning that when you turn the computer back on, you can load those files back up. So remember that when we're running a program, we're running it in the computer's memory. Okay? So when you tell the computer to run the program, the computer executes the instructions one by one. For example, a programmer employed by the bank writes a program and stores it in the memory of the ATM. The moment a customer walks in and swipes his or her ATM card, the computer is activated and starts running the program. Okay? So usually the swiping of the card starts usually a program or a module within a larger program. And so that's the trigger point. Okay, and you're used to this. When you double-click an icon on your desktop, you are starting a program. Okay, you're actually activating a program. You're loading it into memory. That's why it takes a little time sometimes for things like Microsoft Word to pop up on your screen, because it's loading all of those instructions into memory, and then it's executing them. And then once it's done and it's waiting for your input, it stops. Right? So then it waits for your input, and then you do something, and then like you might run a spell check, or you might type in some characters, and then things show up on the screen. Again, a computer program does all of that. Okay? Any questions on this? This is a little bit sometimes a tough concept for people to understand, that that a computer program is running in memory. Okay, and you have to load it. You have to load it first, and then it runs within memory. Any questions on that? Yes, Lucia, go ahead and type it in the chat room. Yes, actually, these notes are available right now. Actually, and you can actually pull them up on your screen if you want to pull them up that way. They're in the module sections. Anything I cover in lecture, usually all of the notes and all of the content that I'll have will be in the module section. Okay. Let's see. That was Jim's question. Let's see. If I make a mistake, I want to change something to the program. Do you need to erase the old stuff over? No. There's a couple of things that we're going to do. We're going to mostly be writing our programs in some sort of text editor, such as Notepad. You could even write it in Microsoft Word, but usually you want to use something like Notepad. So Notepad is under the accessories. So if you go Program Files, Accessories, there's a Notepad there. Also, if you install Python onto your computer, there'll be an editor that comes along with it, and you can basically type in your code there and be able to edit it, and then you can run it, and if there's an error, you can go back and edit the code again. So yes, the answer is you don't have to erase it. You can edit the program as you're creating it or building it, and keep testing it along the way until you get it to work. Does that answer your question, Lucia? Yes. Okay, good. All right. So someone said thanks, or thank God that these are in the module section. Again, so go back to Etude. Everything that you need, okay, for this class was through Etude. So just make sure that you know that. Let's see. I guess it's Jim, right? USC for Jim. So go ahead and ask your question. Answered about the notes. Okay, good. Robert, go ahead and ask your question. No, so initially when you write your program, unless you manually save it, it is not saved on the hard disk. So you have to save your programs. And so when we go over the first program, I'll show you how you can save those programs. And that's how you're going to actually turn them into me. You need to save them to a file onto your computer hard disk, and then you're going to upload those to Etude so that I can see the code that you've written. So I think that answers your question, but basically when you first write your program, just like when you're writing a Word document, if you don't save it and the computer shuts off for some reason, or you pull the power plug on it, you lose everything that you wrote. So the same way, you have to save your programs before you close the program or before you shut down your computer. Did that answer your question, Robert? Yes, it's saved in a file, okay, and it's a regular text file, and you can basically edit it with Notepad, which is a program that comes with Windows. There's a nice editor called Note++. You can use that. If you install Python on your computer, then the Python editor is built in, and that can open those files as well. So the answer is yes, it's saved on your hard drive. You do want to remember where you save your programs so that you can find them when you need to turn them into me. Okay. All right, let's move on to the next topic. So, a lot of people ask this question, do I need to be good at mathematics and understand computer programming? The answer is not necessarily. Many computer programmers come from non-math majors, and that's absolutely true. Computers is, two things have happened in computer science. One is that programming has actually become a lot easier. Secondly, we live in such an electronic era that, in a way, we are kind of used to programming. I mean, we program our DVRs. We program the, we program the remotes on our TVs. We program our entertainment systems. We're able to use Xbox. We're able to use our mobile phones, which are now the smartphones are actually computers, and so in a way you're programming that when you're using the applications and you're configuring them and you know, interacting with them. So again, and again, most of these users are not necessarily you know, very they're not, you know, they don't have a math background. Okay, not to say that math is not needed. It definitely is. Basic math is necessary, but it's again, you don't have to be an expert in it, or you don't have to have gotten an A in math to go into the computer science field. So that's a big misnomer that computer science is only for math majors or people that were very good at math, and that's not necessarily the answer or the case. Okay, next module. Well, I heard there are many computer programming languages. Can you name some? Answer: Python, obviously, C, C++, Java, Visual Basic, etc. There are many, many languages. Okay, so again, there are lots of them. And one of the things that a lot of initial or new programmers ask me is, do I need to learn how to program in every single language? And the answer is no. Once you've learned the basic constructs of programming, which this class will teach you, it'll be very easy for you to pick up other languages because syntax is very similar, not the same, but similar. So when we get to these, when we get to the code part of this, when we start writing code, you'll see it's very, very similar. There's mechanisms to repeat things. There's mechanisms to get input from the user. There's mechanisms to get output out to the screen, and they all kind of run and work the same way. I'm going to put these two questions together so I can talk about them at the same time. So the first one is, why so many languages? Each language offers advantages and disadvantages. For example, for a beginning programmer, Python is good. It's an easy language to learn. It's forgiving. It gives a lot of feedback in terms of what you might be doing wrong. There are many web-based how can I say, environments that you can test your code. You don't have to install anything on your computer. One of those I'm going to show you today. So you get an idea that Python is a very good program for beginners to learn. Okay? If I learn one language, is it enough? Each time I have to learn a new language, is it going to be a challenging task? And the answer is it helps to learn more than one language. If you learn to do programming in one language, it is very easy to pick up programming using other languages. And this is true. I mean, one of the things, I don't know how many of you learn different foreign languages, but things like French and Spanish are very similar in the way that some of the words are the same, their base is the same, and so it's the same way with computer languages, in that a lot of the terminology, a lot of the constructs, a lot of the way that you do things are very similar. And in some cases, the syntax is identical. So it is very easy to pick up other programming languages once you've kind of mastered one. Robert, you have a question? Go ahead and type it into the chat room. Oh, no question. Okay, can you click on your hand icon? Yeah, okay, great, thank you. All right. Any questions on this? Learning other languages. Again, once you've learned one, it'll be pretty easy for you to learn others. So, Stephanie, go ahead. You had a question? Yes, the structures are very similar. When we get to actual coding, I'll kind of point those out. But let's say you wanted to repeat something 10 times. There's this construct called a for loop that allows you to repeat things in a number of times. And the same keyword is used throughout all languages for the for loop. So it's basically for this many times, do this instruction. So in a way, that for is kind of standardized as the keyword for all of the languages. And when you want to do a for loop, and they're usually called for loops, basically you use the for construct. There's other constructs such as if, where you're comparing two things. And if this is equal to this, then execute this code or execute these instructions. And so the if construct is universal across all languages. And so it's in some cases almost identical, in some cases very, very similar. So that's why it's easy to learn a new language, because again, the constructs are very simple. It's just kind of playing around with the syntax and trying to figure it out. Another thing is that a lot of programming editors help you along the way, in that when you're writing the code, it'll kind of flag things that you typed wrong. It'll flag things that if it's a keyword, if you're using it wrong, it kind of it's like an inline spell checker. When you're writing in Word and you type something, you type a word and you misspell it, notice that it gives you that little red squiggly line underneath. A lot of the editors for these programming languages do the same thing, in that you wrote something it doesn't understand. So it's kind of continuously doing a code spell check while you're writing the code. Did that answer your question? Good. All right. So I've heard a language called machine language. How is it different from languages mentioned above? Basically, computer understands only one language. It is called machine language. Machine language is made up of ones and zeros. And so you've probably heard the term called binary, and that's basically what ones and zeros are. A binary numbering system basically allows you to count up to 2, because that's the base. We normally are used to what's called a base 10 numbering system, in that we count from 0 through 9. There are other ones also that are used in computer languages. One is called hex, which goes from 0 to 16. And the way that it represents 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15 is the letters A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, so just to let you know that there's different mechanisms of writing programs, and one of them is machine language. And for us, it would be very difficult as humans to read machine language or even to write it. Okay, so to write programs using machine language, you need to understand the internal architecture of the computer. And it is very challenging to understand and write programs using machine language. There are some programmers that can do this, but it's very, very difficult. And so usually what you do is the computer is actually pretty good at matching things up. And so when you write syntax, or when you write code in a higher level language, such as Python or C or C++, the computer, or a computer program called a compiler, basically converts it to machine language so that the computer can actually understand it and run it. And so, in a way, you don't have to learn machine language, but there are tools that allow you to basically convert it to machine language. Okay, and so let's see. So again, these languages are called higher level languages because they are more like English and they're easier to read. That's the main reason why we have higher level languages, and that's what most, actually, majority of programmers learn to program using higher level languages. Some never ever see machine language, and there's really no need to anymore. Reason is, again, that they use simple English sentences to write instructions to the computer. Makes it a whole lot easier for computer programmers to learn programming. And this is the key right here. Is this is to make it easier for computer programmers. Okay, and it's getting much easier. So be aware that as you become a programmer, all the programming languages and the tools that allow you to write for those languages are getting much easier to use. Okay. Next question. Please tell me the difference between a program, a computer, a programmer, and a user. So again, you need to know the differences between these. Okay. So here goes. Program is a set of instructions to the computer. This is basically what you're going to be writing, is these programs or these instructions. And you're going to construct a program, and that's what you're going to kind of have the computer run. A computer is a dumb machine with lots of memory, which has the capability to execute instructions. And so that's what it does. It's kind of just, it's a machine, right? Basically, it does whatever instructions you give it. A programmer, a person who comes up with a set of instructions to the computer. And so this is the most creative person, is that the programmer is the one that is going to determine what's on the screen, what questions are you going to ask the user, what is it going to, what action does the user have to do to execute, to do something in the computer. So we use this every day. We don't really think about it, but let's say you click on an icon, okay, or you do file save. Well, those are all things that the programmer has constructed, and you as the user use. Okay, so again, now we're behind the scenes. We're kind of like how can you call it, the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, right? We're writing the program this time, okay, and then our users are going to use them. But in order to be a good programmer, you have to take the aspect of the user, in that you have to always keep in your mind, would this be easy for the user to use, right? Would this program be easy to use? How many people probably have used programs that are very difficult to use? They're not easy. They're not intuitive. They make you click, 10 times to do one simple thing. Those are examples of where the programmer wasn't really in tune with either the level of the user, maybe the user is not at a certain expertise level to be able to use that program, or that the programmer has made it unnecessarily complex. So the programmer and the user usually actually work together in making the program. Okay, so again, the user is the customer, and usually that's what you're writing the program for. If you hire to be a programmer, you want to think of the user as a customer. Okay, and so you don't want to frustrate that customer. You want to make sure that the programs work, that they don't have bugs. Imagine that you were using, let's say, an accounting program, and for some reason it had an error in it, and it kept, instead of every time you did a deposit, it minused the number from your checking account. That would, first few times you would say, hey, something weird there. But ultimately you say, well, this program doesn't work. Forget it. I'm not going to use it anymore. And so your customers will kick you out as a programmer, because if your program doesn't work or has a lot of bugs or is not very intuitive or very easy to use, they're going to basically reject it. So there is that back and forth and feedback from the user to the programmer. It's a cycle where the programmer will first come up with an initial program design, maybe even a prototype, run it by the user and say, hey, this is kind of how this program is going to work. What do you think? And then the user will say, no, I need this here, and this takes too long, or this has too many steps. I need to make it easier. So again, that back and forth is always there. So again, back to what is the user or the customer, person who uses the computer program. For example, when you walk onto an ATM and swipe the card, you're playing the role of the user. And there are actually, programmers usually have a small set of users that are called test users. And basically they're there to test the application, have it run through different scenarios, and see if there's issues with user acceptance, user if it's easy, intuitiveness, if it's easy for the user to use the program. Ultimately, programmers want people to use their programs. Okay, so how many people know, all of those apps that are on the app stores, right? That if you have an iPhone or if you have a smartphone, some of those programs suck, and they're not very good because, again, the programmer didn't really take into account of how the users may react to the program. And then there are some really, really great ones that everyone talks about, everyone downloads, and that programmer makes a lot of money because everyone buys their program or buys their app. So again, think of what you're more used to is those apps that you buy or you download from the App Store. They're programs. They're written for a computer, which is your mobile phone or your smartphone. Okay, so any questions about the roles, the different roles? So you have the program, the computer, the programmer, you have the user. All right. Good. All right, so remember, learning any language is exciting and also challenging. Let's assume that you're learning a new human language such as Japanese. Even if you make some minor grammatical mistakes while conversing with someone in Japanese, there is a good chance that your message will get across. But learning a computer language is more challenging, and that computers are extremely unforgiving. If you miss double quotes, those are called double quotes, or if you misspell something, your program will simply not work. So please pay special attention to all your syntax rules. So critical here is to look over your code and make sure that you spell things correctly. That if you name something, you name it consistently. We're going to be naming things in our programs. And so if you have something that's called balance, okay, or new balance, right, if you're writing some sort of calculator or some sort of accounting program, make sure that you spell balance the same everywhere. Okay, so those are the things that you need to pay attention to and make sure that that you're able to catch those types of mistakes, because those are going to be initially your most common mistakes, because the programs are actually pretty trivial in the beginning. They're very, very easy programs, very few lines, but what you want to do is catch that you're writing them correctly. Another thing that I'm going to give you is I'm going to give you a lot of sample programs that you can base your programs on. And so, use those as a guide, use those as a starting point to be able to write your own programs. Don't try to do everything from scratch, and definitely don't try to memorize anything. Programming is not about memorizing. It's always about, learning how someone else wrote a certain instruction or how they're using certain instructions and then using it the same way. And so, there is no memorization. There's no, I'm not going to give you any type of test that says, what is this, is this code correct, or is this, how do you write this code from memory? That's not the point of computer programming. It's all about lookups. There's many, many resources that you can use and I expect you to use, and they're all on the internet. For programmers, the internet has become the best tool for finding out how to code. And I'm going to give you many, many resources throughout this class that you can continue to learn Python as well as learn how to continue to build your programming skills. So before we get into the little demo part about the sites that I'm going to kind of point you to, any questions so far? Again, this is just an overview. This is just to make sure that everyone is able to connect kind of into the lecture. And that, again, these are recorded, so you can always go back and view them again. So I didn't want to cover anything too major, just to make sure that everyone is able to get this format down. And again, even if you miss the lectures, that's not a big deal. I'm not making the lectures mandatory. You'll always be able to get the materials from the module section within eTeachers. But also remember that I will always record all of these sessions, and you'll be able to look them up. I'm going to switch over to the CCC Confer, and I want you to pay attention to the archive section. And so what you want to do is when you go, can everyone see the CCC Confer screen that I have? Okay, looks like everyone can. Okay, I'm getting yeses, so that's good. So if you go into the archive section, so notice that the name here, ours says CS902, okay? And another way you could search for it is section 8023. So remember some keywords from the name. For some reason, my name doesn't work, so you'll have to use something like CS902 to find it. So what I'm going to do is I had another test recording that I did over the weekend, and so I'm going to walk through how to search for it in the archives. If I go to archives here, okay, and then I look in and I write CS902, and I say find archive. There it is. So there was a test for CS902 that I did on 6/15. And if you look at the right-hand side of the screen here, you'll see archive. And so when you click on that archive, it will load a similar window what we have here, but it will actually have a play button that you can basically play through the entire lecture. You can also skip. So it's just like, with iTunes or whatever, you can jump forward, you can jump back, you can re-listen to something, you can watch me do things on the screen again. So a lot of times when I'm doing demos and I'm actually writing code, you can go back and watch me do it again. So that's a really nice benefit that we get using the CCC Confer. So any questions on how to get to the archives and how to search for them? The key is searching for them. So you want to definitely type in CS902, and there's a space between the CS and 902, and then you'll be able to see everything that shows up. And so usually it takes, I think, at least a few hours before the recording gets processed, and so you probably won't see this one until tomorrow once I finish recording it. It might be faster, I'm not sure, but my guess is it takes a little while. Another nice thing to hear is it'll tell you the time, also the duration. Okay, so it'll tell you how long that video is. So if you got to run out in 15 minutes, and the duration in this case looks like 30 minutes, then you know that it's gonna take a lot longer, so you can come back to it. Again, you can review it as many times as you want. So again, this CCC Confer is the main way to review the stuff that I've done in my lecture. I think someone had asked if they had missed the lectures, and so this is the way to do it, the way to basically catch up. Another thing is, and I haven't made an announcement, but I did talk about it at the orientation. But I'm on campus every Saturday from 1 till 3 in CE 101. So if your computer doesn't work, or there's some problem that you're having, or you're completely stuck on something and you're not able to make it work, then you can definitely come on campus. Another thing is I can do if something is due and it's due before the Saturday and we have enough time, you can try to schedule an appointment with me and we can do a Skype session, so I can basically see what your code looks like and potentially help you fix it. So any questions on kind of the way that most of the online communication methods are going to kind of play out? So, all right. Now what I want to do is I want to go over a few sites that we're going to be using quite extensively in this class. So give me a second while I pull them up. Give me one. So the first thing is one of the main sites that you can see is what's called python.org. And this is the main kind of where Python comes from, where all the standards are. If you want to install it on your own computer, this is where you would install it. So you would go down to 3.32, that's the version that we're going to use, and you would go into Windows Installer. So you go into Windows Installer, and it'll ask you if you want to download and install it. One of the next lectures I will actually show you how to install it and how to use it. So what you probably want to do right now is just download it and just be aware that it's here. I'm going to also put these links. I'm going to put these links in the announcements or module section, so you can basically be able to pull them up. Rosemary, you had a question. Is there a gray screen whenever? Yeah. So whenever I'm moving around, there's going to be a gray screen. So it takes a little while for the screen to refresh. Has it refreshed now for you? And another question that Rosemary had is it fine if we're using Mac OS X? And the answer is yes. So if you go down, there should be, let's see, if you go into download here, there is a Python, if you look at the screen now, there's a Python 3.3.2 Mac OS X 64-bit, 32-bit installer. And so it will basically install the same thing. It'll be a little different, and if you do need help with the way that it looks in the Mac. I have a Mac, and so I can do a demo on that as well if anyone needs that. Just so that basically they run the same. So it's, again, if you're using Windows 7, that's fine. If you look up here, the one that's Windows x86 or x86 64, either one, depending on what you have. So what I would suggest is you use just the x86 version, and that's the link I'm going to put in the announcements for the Windows version, and then for the Mac version, I'll put in the 64-bit or the 32-bit installer. But again, Mac OS X 10.6 or later. Again, there's other versions if you do need it. But this one here, okay, it's for the Windows, and this one here is for the Mac. Okay, did everyone see that? And someone asked, is it okay if we're using Windows 7? The answer is yes. This will work under Windows 7. It will also work under XP, and it should work under Windows 8. And I'm not sure about that, but I'll probably check into that. But it should work fine. All right. Now, being that, yeah, okay. So it looks like Tim says it works on Windows 8, so he's verified it, so that's fine. Being that, one of the things that I want to show you guys is initially you don't have to install anything on your computer. And so I'm going to show you another site, what's called the Python Visualizer. Let me pull that up. And actually I put a link to that in the module section. So if you look at the module section, there is a online Python tutor visualizer. There's a link in there. I'm going to pull it up in a minute. I'm going to put it up here in another tab. So this is what's called a visualizer. So here, if you look at the top, can everyone see the screen right now? Anyone not able to see the screen? Okay, good. It looks like everyone's able to see. So here, basically you have a little editor right in your browser. And so basically the first few programs you can definitely do this way. And you should be able to do the entire class this way. So you don't have to worry about installing it. Down at the bottom down here it says executing code using. And notice that there's two versions, and you want to set it to Python 3.3 because we're going to be doing everything in Python 3.3. So basically you would write your code here, okay? And if you look further down, there's a button that says Visualize Execution. Basically what it does is it runs this code and shows you the output right on the screen. What's really nice about this, it also shows you all of the constructs and all of the memory locations and everything that you're using in your program. So if you look at this example, I'm just going to run it. It's a sample that they have here. This is a pretty complicated little program here. But if you see Visualize Execution, notice that it basically starts to run. It shows you a red cursor where the line is going to execute next. Okay, and so you can see it's at 1, and you can go line by line. If you go down to the bottom, it says forward. Okay, notice that this program has 27 instructions, and you're on step 1 of 27. So if I hit forward, it will go ahead and run the next line of code. And notice here, it basically executed this code. If you look at the right here, you can see that it created a global variable called x, okay, and it's some sort of list, and it has the values 1, 2, 3. Okay, what's nice is that it visualizes all of the objects that you have in your program. And so this is a really, really good editor and a good way of testing your program to see what's going on kind of behind the scenes. When you're running it in the IDE, if you download and install Python on your computer, then you may have issues with being able to see what are the variables, what are its values. So what's nice about this is it lets you see the values. Another nice thing, a couple of you are asking the question, does this work on your iPad? This is looks like this is a pure HTML5 application or website, and so technically it should work. I'll go ahead and test it, but if someone can test it, let me know. But this should work on an iPad or any tablet that is HTML5 compliant. And notice that I'm just stepping through the program, so I'm going next. I'm going to go forward. Here's the next construct. If I want to run the whole program, I just go last. And basically we'll run the whole thing. And down at the bottom you can see there's a section for program output. And this is to see what's coming out of your program. So you can see there's some print statements up there, and basically they're printing out the list. And so you can see the first list is basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and the word hello. And the second one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the word hello. So if I want to edit this code, I just go into edit code. Robert, you had a question. Go ahead and type it in the chat. What editor do the professionals use for writing Python? So there's a couple. There's when you download Python from the link that I was before, it comes with an editor called idle, and idle is used quite a bit. Also, there are other editors like Eclipse. Eclipse is a web. It's an editor for mostly web developers, but it also has plugins for Java. It has plugins for JavaScript as well as Python as well. And so Eclipse is a very popular editor as well. So did that answer your question? There's many editors out there, but the free ones are idle that comes with Python, and then there's Eclipse that you can download, but you have to download the Python plugin to be able to program with Python. Again, I wouldn't get too hung up with worrying about which editors to use right now. I would make sure that you keep up and make sure you write the code and use things like this visualizer to actually run and type the code so you're keeping up. Again, if your editor doesn't work, you should be able to use this to do most of the work that you need to do. And how do I get code in and out of this? Basically, I can copy and paste. So I'm going to go ahead and write a couple of lines in Notepad over here. Edit this code, delete. So you can see I'm just going in here and actually deleting code. And you can definitely try this when you want to get off the session. And what I did here is I just pasted in some code. So I wrote these 2 lines of code inside of Notepad, and I just copied and pasted them. Okay, so I can just copy and paste back and forth and try to run them. And so if I do visualize execution, okay, so you can see I just execute. This is once I go forward. Now notice that basically I've created a variable called var a or vara, okay, and I've set it to the word hello world. Notice that's in double quotes, okay, and so notice on the right hand side here I have a global variable called vara, and you can see that it holds the letters hello world in it. So the next line is called print vara, and I can pretty much you can pretty much tell what it's going to do. It's going to print the contents of that variable, which is in print the variable is in parentheses, but basically it'll take whatever is in that variable and print it out to the screen. So if I go forward, notice now I have a program output down at the bottom, and it shows hello world. Okay. So again, I can go back to the first line, and then I can just run the whole program just by doing last, and you'll notice it just runs straight through it. So you can step through a program using this, or you can just run through the whole entire program. Okay. So again, definitely use this. It's called the Visualizer. The link is in the module section. So you can start to kind of play around with just writing some simple little constructs. Robert, you had a question. Okay. Lucia, is your screen working okay now? Okay, good. All right, so I don't want to cover too much material today. I want you to kind of digest what's there. I want you to, tomorrow maybe go back and look at this, and actually try this. Try running this little simple program that I wrote. Basically, it has, it has one line that says it sets up a variable, and we'll talk about variables a little later. And it basically prints the value of that variable out onto the screen. And so, again, just want you to get kind of familiar with this visualizer and being able to edit it. One of the things you definitely want to be able to do is copy and paste from either Notepad or some sort of editor and paste it into here and be able to use the editor to write code. Okay? When writing code, let's see, Stephanie has a question. When writing code, you have whole sentences, code for single letters like x equals, my name is Sam. When you say whole sentences for code, what do you mean by that? So you're talking about, if you're talking about the variables, yes, variables can be single letters. In this case, I wrote the variable as var a, just stating that it's a variable and it's the letter a. So in this respect, it's one word. The whole variable is called vara, okay, or var a, however you want to spell it, or however you want to pronounce it. Does that answer your question? Good. And print is actually a function. And so if you notice, it has the word in parentheses. That means that it needs a parameter. And so basically it's saying print what? It's asking print what? And so in the what has to go inside of parentheses. Okay, so that's why I have to put the word vara inside of parentheses. Let's see, Susan, you have a question. No, the numbers are automatic. So here I'm going to go back into edit code and notice that if I hit the carriage return, automatically number 3 shows up. You do not need to write the numbers at all. It's a way to tell you where you are in the program. Also, I'm going to purposely make a mistake here. I'm going to put the word question mark after that. Okay, and then I'm going to run it, and what's going to happen is it's going to tell me that there's an error. And notice that it tells me what line the error is. And so the lines tell you where it had a problem. So it's a way of organizing your code, saying, okay, when we get to programs that have, let's say, 50 lines, the error may be at line 35. If it didn't tell you what line number it was, then you would have to hunt through it to try to figure it out. And so this is what it's basically telling you here. No one was able to see the little pop-up that came up? Okay. The reason, okay, so what's happening is when I ran this, a little pop-up came up, and it basically said there was a syntax error on line 2. Again, you're going to have to try this out and see how that works, because the pop-ups don't show up on the webinar, okay? So did anyone see the pop-up at all? No. So yeah, so basically the pop-up pops up. So what I can do is I can take a snapshot of it and show it to you. Let's go back to my document here. Okay. Alright. Let me go to Word. And I'm going to share this now. Let's share. Okay, bear with me for 1 second. I want to show you what that message looks like. I'm not seeing the share. I cannot share one. I'm not able to share this. Okay. Yeah, okay, you got it. So this, so Rosemary wrote it up, and again, you guys can try it. It says syntax error, invalid syntax, string line 2. So you can see that right there. So a little pop-up pops up, and that's what shows up. Okay, so when you do that visualizer and you have an error there, notice also that it puts that little red question mark there. That kind of, and also when it does stop the program, notice that the whole line is yellow, saying that's where the problem is. Okay, and so if I go in here and I correct this, and notice that the line now is not yellow anymore, and it comes back to normal text. Okay, so any questions on that? All right. Again, what I want you to do is, if you're going to install the Python, then you download it. But otherwise, you can always use this to be able to test and write your code. Any questions on what we're using? Stephanie, yes. Yes, actually, if you go to the, let me pull up the, okay, so if you look here in the module section, okay, different. Under Module 1, which is getting started, there's the fundamental concepts and frequently asked questions, which is what I covered during the lecture. And the next one is online Python tutor visualizers. If you click on that, there's the link that you'll go to get to the visualizer. If I click that, notice that it pops up. All right. Laura asked a question. Again, please do raise your hand so I get a little bell that goes off when you ask questions. Otherwise, I have to keep monitoring the chat session. Okay, great, Laura. Thank you. So the answer is no, not initially. I'm going to run through all the programs and make sure that they work through the visualizer. So technically, all you should need is the visualizer. If you do want to install it, you can go ahead and install it. If you do have problems with installation or running it or using it, what I am going to do is in one of the next lectures, I'm going to actually walk through the installation and walk through running it through the idle interface. So I'm just giving you options. Right now, I would suggest that you just use the visualizer to kind of play around. And then once I go through it in the next, I'm actually going to do it in the next lecture. You can watch while I do it so that you won't run into any trouble yourself. So if you know how to install things and you've done installations before, then go ahead and download it. And I'm going to put the link up on the module section of where you can download the Python. And so I'll put a link for the Windows and I'll also put a link for the Mac. So it's up to you. You can go ahead and try to install it now if you want. Otherwise, you can watch while I walk through it and then and show you how to run it and use it. So it's up to you. Did that answer your question, Laura? Yes. Okay, good. Then if you can put your hand down. Susan, you had a question. Go ahead and type your question. If you have a 64-bit AMD, do we install the second program? I would suggest that you use the 32-bit. There's nothing that we're going to write that requires a 64-bit version. So I'm going to go back to the download. And so if you look here, okay, this one is what's called x86 MSI installer. I suggest you install that. It will work both on a 64-bit Windows, it will run on a 32-bit Windows, it will run on basically any Windows that you have. So my suggestion is you use that one, just so that you won't run into any specific problems with 64-bit. But if you notice that it says Windows AMD 64 / Intel 64 x86-64, that means it actually runs on both AMD and Intel 64-bit processors. So again, we're not using anything that requires 64-bit, so my suggestion is that you run the 32-bit. And even if you have a 64-bit version of Windows installed, the 32-bit version runs just as fast and just as good as 64-bit. So there's really no reason to install the 64-bit, especially for this class. Did that answer your question? Good. Robert, you have a question? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to each of them and show you where you're going to get your assignments and how you're going to actually load them up. The way I'm going to do that, I'm actually going to go into my last semester and show you what an assignment looks like. And I did this for the orientation, if some of you were there. And I'm not sure if I did it in both orientations or if it was in only one. So this I'm going, if everyone can everyone see the etudes page that I'm on? A bunch of you say yes if you can. Yes, okay, good, perfect. So I'm going to go into my Computer Science 902 that I taught in the spring, and I'm going to go into the assignments and test section, okay? And so once it comes up, there we go, test drive. So you're going to see I have a bunch of assignments here, and so you'll see the word begin. Notice it says close because the due date is already passed, obviously, but since I'm the instructor, I can start anyone that I want. So here is a project 3 part 1. Okay, so I'm going to go in there. If I hit begin, okay, you'll see that there's some instructions, and then you click on begin. If you've used etudes, this is all very familiar. So here I'm asking you to write a program using a for next loop. Okay, and this is the kind of details of it. If you look down at the bottom, it says click on browse to locate your file and then click upload to upload your file. So I'm going to hit browse, and you're not going to see it, but a little dialog window pops up asking me to go find the file that I want to upload. Once I've selected the file, then I click on the upload, and it will show up below this between the browse and the continue later. Once you are finished and you've uploaded the file, if you do continue later, you can still go back and delete it, and you can still go back and upload another file to replace it. But if you hit finish, finish is like you mailed the package in the mailbox, right? You can't stick your hand back into the mailbox and try to get the letter back. So Finish means it's gone. And if you've done that, then you need to contact me for me to re-release the assignment for you to be able to resubmit. So again, make sure that when you hit finish, that you're sure that you want to close this project or this assignment out, and you're not going to go back to it. Okay, so continue later allows you to come back to it. Finish closes it out, and you're done. Right? So there's no no bringing it back, no deleting it, no changes are allowed to it at all. And in order for me to grade it, you have to finish it. So you have to hit the finish button. If you don't hit the finish button, I don't see it. And if it's past the due date, and if it's especially 2 days past the due date, then I'm not going to accept it. So you definitely have to hit finish, but you don't want to do it too early. Okay? Does everyone understand that? All right. So did that answer your question? Looks like Robert said yes. Okay. Alfred, you have a question. Yes, so I would either run it in the visualizer, or I'll run it in the idle Python idle editor. So either one, I will basically run it in either one. So yeah, basically you're going to turn in a file, and that file has all the instructions in it. And if you use idle, it allows you to save files right within idle. If you are using the visualizer, you have to copy back and forth from Notepad or some sort of editor, and then when you're done and the program works, then you save that as a file, and then you upload and send it to me. Now, one thing I want to, and when I release the first assignment, I'll talk about file extensions, but the extension for Python files is .py. So if you're familiar with the extensions, docx is for Word documents, .xls is for Excel documents, .ppt is for PowerPoint, .txt is for text, but Python programs, the extension is .py. It's going to be definitely use .py. Okay, so looks like that answered your question. Stephanie, you have a question. If you're typing in Word, do we number the lines like in the visualizer? No, it doesn't. You don't number the lines. You don't type in the numbers at all. Okay, so just put each instruction on a separate line and then paste it into the visualizer, and it'll automatically put the lines there for you. If I'm going to go back to the visualizer, I'll show you. Notice, I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but the line numbers are in a column that's grayed out. It's because that's not typed in. It's put there for you automatically. Watch as I hit a bunch of carriage returned. This is just a numbering sequence that shows up on the left panel. It's kind of like you can call this the gutter, but basically it's the left panel that tells you what line you're working on. Okay, and I think that answered your question. Okay, Laura, you have a question. Can we use Word doc to do the assignment? I would suggest not using Word, just because you might be tempted to use the spell checker to potentially fix words in there, and that's not going to help you in any way. What I would suggest that you use is a text editor. Either you can download Note++ if you want to download and install it, or you can use the Notepad application within Windows. And if you go under Program Files, Accessories, and then you'll see something called Notepad, and you can use Notepad. So I would suggest that you use that instead of Word. If Word is the only thing that you can find, then absolutely, but I would highly suggest you try to find Notepad and run that. Tim, you had a question. Yes, that's correct. So the extension is .py, because if I get frustrated enough changing your extensions from txt to py, then it's going to wear on me for after a while. So yes, the answer is that you want with the extension .py and not .txt. So you want to change that. If you can't change it, or if you need me to show you how to do it, I'll do it in one of the sessions, and I'll show you how you can change the extension. All right. We have about another, I'd say, 7 minutes left in this session. So if there's any last-minute questions, I'm going to answer those. Otherwise, you guys can always send me private messages through eTudes and ask more questions. And as I get to them, I'll answer them back. So any other questions that, especially of anything that we covered today, and specifically about the visualizer, because I definitely want you guys to try that out. Jim, I'm assuming USC4 Jim your name is Jim. So if you guys can use kind of just your names in there, because if it's got all these funny things in it, it's difficult for me to figure out who's who. All right, so go ahead, Jim. Go ahead and ask your question. Probably, I'm going to do one more lecture, and then I'm going to assign the first probably two, or the first assignment, maybe the first two assignments. Okay, so I definitely want to do a little bit more lecture in that. I want to show you how to use the idle interface, as well as go over some code constructs. I went over a little bit here today, but I want to go over what are variables, how do you write your first simple program, and start going over some actual code segments. Okay, so that should answer your question. All right, Robert. You probably weren't in the orientation. The tests are actually programming assignments. They're what are called multi-section. In that you're using, let's say we get to project 3 and we have the midterm, then pieces of project 1, 2, and 3 will be used in the midterm assignment, and it is basically a programming project that you upload. So if there is no real time test, the tests themselves are just larger programs that combine things that you've learned up to that point. Did that answer your question? Okay, good. Any other questions? Rosemary. Anything? Basically, if you're in this session and you're able to have connected to this CCC Confer, that was the main thing. Also, using eTudes, I went over using eTudes. I talked a little bit about frequency of lectures, roughly about 3 per week. Okay, so we're going to probably have another one on Wednesday. Okay, so you can kind of get a heads up on that. I will try to give you more notice this time so that you'll have time to kind of plan around it. But you can kind of expect one on Wednesday night. Okay, that's I'm going to try to do, every 2-3 days max, we'll have a lecture. Does that answer your question? Yes. Okay, Tim. And this is going to be the last question I'm going to take, because this is going to cut us out in a couple of minutes. So I don't want to cut someone off mid-question. Go ahead, Tim. Yes, they will be at 7 p.m. If there's a huge request for one on the weekends, then I will do potentially a review one on the weekend. So if a bunch of you ask and say, hey, we have, and it'll be just a question session, and it'll basically be, probably on Saturday or Sunday afternoon, and basically it will be a CCC Confer session, but it will just be there just to answer questions about any of the recorded lectures that happened that week. That's probably the best I can offer at this point. During the day is a little bit tough for a lot of people because a lot of people work. So I want to try. I tried to maximize the number of people that could view the, and join in on the session. So again, remember that the lectures are not mandatory. Everything I cover in these lectures are going to be available through eTubes. You always have the chance to do a Skype session with me if you need to do one, or another CCC Confer session on the weekends. So I will set those up. Again, just request it from me, and I'll definitely do that. Did that answer your question? Okay, good. 939 is, I think it's Java, right? I think that's the, good job. C, yes, this class will prepare you for the first C class. So everything we do in here, you will see again, but you will see it in the C programming language. Okay, so all of the constructs, the decision structures that we have, the looping, the lists or arrays that we have, some of we may touch on objects. Basically, all of the stuff you learn in this class will be needed in your next class, and that's why actually this class is a prerequisite for 939. All right. Did that answer your question? Good. All right. Okay, so I'm going to sign off. Again, if you guys can go ahead and ask more questions in the through eTube's private messages. If you're not sure how to do private messages, I will cover that next time as well. All right, thank you very much, and we'll see you Wednesday night. You too. Thanks. Bye.